Hey, welcome to Crossroads. We're live from Turning Points America Fest in Phoenix, Arizona, and we're going to have exclusive content from America Fest only on Epoch TV, so make sure you join us over on Epoch TV. Now, today's stories will be talking about Obama being allegedly pretty worried right now that Biden could lose the 2024 elections, and also Donald Trump. Well, we're talking now about his Project 2025 agenda. And Elon Musk is saying that DEI must die. We'll go into all this stuff. First off, let me show you this. Former President Barack Obama is allegedly concerned that President Joe Biden could lose the 2024 election. Now, this is according to Wall Street Journal, which cited an unnamed source, familiar with Barack Obama's thinking, so take it as you will. But it says the concern here, it does fit into a broader pattern that we're seeing in poll data and among corporate news outlets, which do highlight the same outlook for the upcoming election. Wall Street Journal says this. They say President Biden heads into the end of the year with deepening Democratic worries about his re-election, and his effort to aid allies in wars hangs in the balance on Capitol Hill and an impeachment inquiry into him and his family's. Those with concerns include former President Barack Obama, who knows this is going to be a close race and feels that Democrats could very well could lose the 2024 election. Now, they claim, again, this is according to a person familiar with this thinking, so again, take it as you will. But it says that Obama worries that the alternative is pretty dangerous for democracy, meaning Donald Trump, and of course they've been framing Trump as a threat to democracy. Now, as this is happening, interestingly, Barack Obama and Joe Biden even released some campaign videos together. They're campaigning together. Hillary Clinton is rolling out again. They're trying to save the Biden campaign, and all the system is coming out behind him. Now, there's a lot going on right now. Some of the polls, including actually from Wall Street Journal, which actually for the first time ever just recently is now showing Trump beating Biden for the 2024 elections. The Supreme Court's also very likely going to hear a case on executive privilege on the Trump criminal charges, and Special Counsel Jack Smith, he's trying to rush that through. He's trying to rush it through the system, and he's even trying to bypass the appeals courts to make sure it happens before the election. Yeah, while they try to tell us this isn't about the election, Jack Smith is specifically trying to rush it through before the election. What does that tell you, right? Now, there's also the impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden, which is now officially beginning, and also more details on good old Hunter Biden and his possible ties to Joe Biden and his many alleged crimes that are now being dug up. And Hunter Biden is also facing more criminal charges, and well, as these come about, even if Biden, Joe Biden is not directly involved in them, all of it reflects on him. Meaning, essentially, the entire political game, the entire, I don't know if you call it an October surprise at this point, because they've been going at it, for the past, not only through Trump's entire presidency, but at the very least since he left office, they've been going at it nonstop, and everything they have done is failing now. Every single thing they've done, everything they could pull out of their hat, every trick they had, every single piece of it is failing, and they realize this. And even some Democrats now are breaking from the pack, and they're even supporting Biden's impeachment. Senator Mullen, a Republican from Oklahoma, is saying that 5 Democrats are willing to look into an impeachment case against Joe Biden. Watch this.
Have any Democratic senators mentioned to you, off the record again, that they would look at this fairly and objectively?
Yes.
Which would, I'm talking about a yes vote on impeaching the president if it gets there.
Yeah, if they said if it was convictable offense, they would definitely be looking to convict.
Okay.
In a non, as I said, in a non-bipartisan look. I've had that conversation with 5. I will not name them because I don't want to put them in a position, but with 5 separate senators, all 5 of them has said the exact same thing. And these are senators that I have somewhat a relationship with, but we usually vote opposite on most things.
5 Democrats who are open to voting for impeachment.
Yes.
Now look, let's lay that out. Several Democrats could now side with Republicans to impeach Joe Biden. Republicans, if they're going to actually impeach Biden, they need quite a few more Democrats to join with them. Very likely in the House of Representatives, they're going to pass it. At the very least, they're going to have that hanging over Biden. The big issue, though, is not so much the impeachment or criminal charges or anything like that. It's the impact this is very likely going to have in the 2024 elections. And keep in mind, over the next year leading up to Election Day, we're going to be hearing a lot about this, as notably the Trump charges are failing, especially because they're going to have a court ruling from the Supreme Court very likely very soon on whether Trump has executive privilege, meaning that he cannot be attacked like that legally anyway. And so that brings up a big question of, they keep saying Trump's a threat to democracy. They keep saying that, that Trump is come in like a dictator. What are they actually talking about? They're talking about Project 2025. And this is, it's not technically through Trump, but let me explain. If Trump gets back into office in 2024, his alleged plan is what's called Project 2025. Let me show you the website for it. That's actually just project2025.org. It's being pushed through the Heritage Foundation think tank. Technically, you could say it's not Trump doing it, right? It's the Heritage Foundation. But Trump appears to be, he seems on board with it. What is it? Well, it's a government in waiting for Donald Trump in his second term. A lot of the accusations against Trump, even from people who like him, during the time when he was president, was that he didn't really replace a lot of the officials within the American government. He didn't really put his own cabinet in. He came in there, I think, like a businessman, thinking he could change things, and he got backstabbed and front stabbed from just about everybody around him. And of course, that was one of the big accusations. He didn't clean house. He didn't go in there and appoint all of his people, and he even selected people from within the system. It didn't work out for him. This time, they've learned from that. As soon as Trump comes in, there's already an entire government in waiting to make his whole cabinet, to replace everybody, to set a whole new system in place in our government and fundamentally change it. And it also includes a plan that Trump has announced that he's going to be doing. He wants to fire around 50,000 federal workers, and by doing so, purge what's called the deep state, the bureaucrats and unelected officials and so on, right? The permanent government. He's going to fire them. And, really, that would have been very hard before all of this. It would have been very hard to do while he was president. But during the last days of his administration, or towards the end, he actually changed some fundamental laws where, technically you can't fire these people, but there's a way to technically fire them, not fully, which of course had to go through some legal limbo, which did in fact pass. And so he now, as soon as he comes into office, is going to have the legal grounding to just fire anybody he wants in the federal government. And this would also allegedly include a plan as well, in addition to all of this, to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807 to use the military and law enforcement to have the Justice Department prosecute the people who, they're saying that it's Trump adversaries, but you could say it's the people who we maybe believe have been doing illegal things. Why is he going to do that? Well, look, it's not me saying it. It's the legacy media saying he's going to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807. And the main idea with that is that the court system has been politicized. We see it right now, weaponization of justice. We see it right now where the Department of Justice is, acting more politically, it seems. You have Soros DAs. You have essentially no law enforcement when it comes to most normal crimes. And things that should not be crimes, like, stating your religious views or protesting at, Planned Parenthood meetings or Planned Parenthood, facilities. Things like that are being dubbed crimes. The justice system, the courts, many of the judges, the view is that a lot of them have been politicized. They're acting for political reasons and so on. And so the use of the Insurrection Act of 1807 would let Trump use military courts and, use law enforcement more directly to have more directly go after these types of issues, which could actually put a lot of people behind bars, especially if we say that, for example, the Trump-Russia hoax was, an act of maybe insurrection or, treason even. We could say that the, targeting of the J6ers, a lot of this stuff, there could be crimes committed on the other side of the aisle, which, typically are not even, there's no real potential that the people responsible for this stuff could ever get charged. if Trump did this, he would actually be able to go after them. And so the people on the establishment are shaking in their boots, saying Trump's going to be a dictator. He wants to be a dictator. That's the big narrative. And so there's been a stream. Let me show you some of this. There's been a stream of corporate media reports saying that Trump wants to be a dictator and he's going to come in and he's going to be like, the new Caesar. They're comparing him to Julius Caesar now. Let me show you some headlines. Rolling Stone said this: Dictator Trump plans to deploy massive number of troops on U.S. soil in his first term. Trump plans to send troops to war on the southern border, where they're thwarted. And it says this time he's talking about sending up to 300,000 there. Oh, Lord forbid that Trump might enforce border security. But they're saying he's a dictator because he wants to do that. AP says this: Trump's vow to only be a dictator on day one, and I'll explain what he actually said there. Trump's vow to only be a dictator on day one follows growing worry about his authoritarian rhetoric. They're taking it out of context, but I'll show you in a minute what he actually said. Look, did Trump actually say that he wants to be a dictator for one day, day one? This, you judge for yourself, all right? Let me show you what Trump actually said. This is what they're using to frame that narrative. I'll play it for you right now.
You would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except
Look,
for?
he's going crazy. Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border and I want to drill.
That's
drill,
not. That's
drill.
That's not.
No, no.
That's not retribution. I got.
I'm going to be. He keeps. We love this guy. He says, "You're not going to be a dictator, are you?" I said, "No. Other than day one, we're closing the border and we're drilling."
All right, you get that? They're saying Trump is promising to be a day one dictator. On day one, he's going to be a dictator. Maybe just for one day, but who knows? Do you think that's what he said? Well, he technically did, but what was he referring to? He said that he would be a dictator for one day where he would close the border and then drill for oil. That's what he's saying. Trump is saying when he comes in, he's going to, dictate that we close the border and then dictate that we drill for oil. And they're using that to make it sound like it's going to be Julius Caesar. That's the narrative, and that's how they're framing it. That's how they're taking that quote out of context in those headlines. And look, of course, Trump did promise before that he would be the retribution for the American people. He actually did say that. And this is also being used by the establishment to push this entire narrative. They're using this again to make this entire narrative. And, that said, on the border, Trump does have a plan for mass deportations, and it looks also like there's a legal avenue to do this. Fox News said this. They say former acting Immigrations and Custom Enforcement Director Tom Homan wants to unfreeze the agency. Look, the ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they've had their hands tied behind their back. The existence of that government agency is to deport people who illegally enter the United States. That's the reason that entire branch of our government exists. The reason ICE exists is to deport illegal immigrants. They haven't been able to do their jobs. The government, the federal government, is not playing its basic role. It's not fulfilling its basic duty of securing our borders. And they're making it sound like a scandal that Trump wants to allow an existing federal agency to do its job. That's where that narrative is coming from. And the former ICE director, he says he wants to unfreeze the agency and help launch a massive and historic deportation program if President Donald Trump returns to the White House in 2025. And on this note, Homan promised that no illegal immigrant would be off the table for enforcement. If you're breaking this country's laws, they want to deport you, at least if you're an illegal alien. And Homan was honored during the Obama administration for his role leading ICE's enforcement and removal operations, which was ERO, which arrests and removes illegal immigrants. Under Obama, they were doing it still. And it notes that a Washington Post article at the time said Homan deports people and he's really good at it. Remember, it wasn't controversial at the time because the media loved Obama, right? That being said, right? Briefly, when Donald Trump talked about, I am your retribution, what was he talking about? He was saying that, look, they're going at, Trump is saying they're going after me. They're going after me with everything they have, and he says, but they really want to go after you, and I'm standing between them and you, right? And so that's why he's targeting him politically. He said that's why they're going after him with rolling indictments. That was Trump's narrative. And also when it comes to J6, when it comes to the demonizing of Trump supporters, when it comes to Biden shouting about the MAGA extremists, when it comes to him saying it's a threat to the soul of the nation, when it comes to the military having evangelical Christians and Catholics, notably, listed as like terrorists, the American people are being targeted. And when Trump says, I am your retribution, he means that there's going to be justice on the other side for people who have been abusing Americans based on their political views, based on their moral values, and based on their religion. That's what he's suggesting. Agree with it or disagree with it, that's really the context of what he was saying. And that being said, of course, we have another thing in our country going on, which is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We talked about a few things, right? There's ESG, environmental and social governance, the use of investment and so on in order to push political agendas. Notably, by the way, BlackRock is now being sued. I'll have to go into that in a future episode. They're being sued for doing that. And ESG is dying I would say a slow death, but it looks like a rapid death right now. And so as ESG goes away, well, what about DEI? Well, Elon Musk has just declared DEI must DIE. DEI must die. That's according to Elon Musk. And, he said this, he said, quote, the point was to end discrimination, not replace it with different discrimination. And now, on that note, that is one of the big debates around discrimination. That's one of the big debates around DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. The whole thing runs on the narrative that they're going to end discrimination in America, that we need to fight against racial discrimination in the government and schools and any kind of government institution and the police. We have to make sure that people are not looking at let's say, the color of someone's skin, but instead judging them by the content of their character. And that's not the way DEI works. DEI works specifically by judging people by the color of their skin. That's the basis of it. DEI, the entire foundation is discrimination. Racial discrimination mostly, but also discrimination on gender, discrimination on sexual orientation, and discrimination on all these other things to give preferential treatment to some people, actual discrimination, and to push down others. Notably, if you're white or you're straight or you're maybe normal, and in other regards, well, you're going to get hit down and, smashed down by the old DEI narrative. It is actual discrimination. It is racism, it is sexism, it is gender discrimination. It's the whole 9 yards masquerading as the very opposite of what it actually is. And look, this is tying into the whole debate right now also on anti-Semitism and the craziness we're watching at universities like Harvard. I never imagined I'd see this stuff happening at Harvard. Well, maybe I could, right? And it's also into the pushback against DEI we're seeing in the government and in corporate media. You have guys like Elon Musk now leading the charge and calling out DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion for exactly what it is. The mask has fallen off. The American people see it for what it is, and they want it out. Fox News said this. They say DEI policies have come under increased scrutiny in recent months amid a surge of anti-Semitism on college campuses following Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th. They're saying critics argue that the program favors certain protected groups while allowing hostility towards others, such as Jewish students and faculty members in this case. And Elon Musk, they say, is the latest addition to a growing list of high-profile figures who have criticized the outcomes from DEI programs in recent days amid backlash over the presidents of Harvard, the University of Pennsylvania, and MIT, all refusing to say during a House hearing on anti-Semitism that calling for genocide of Jews on their respective campuses breached their rules and amounted to harassment. Folks, this is where we're at. You can call for genocide against a group of people based on their religion and race, and these DEI universities will defend you calling for genocide based, ironically, on DEI. Let that sink in. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. is allowing people on these college campuses, while they try to preach to us, to call for genocide of Jews. That's where we're at right now. And look, following that testimony, it says here, billionaire Harvard alum Bill Ackman called on all 3 Ivy League leaders to resign in disgrace. And he suggested Harvard President Claudine Gay only landed her job in the first place due to the university's DEI policies. Now, I would challenge that. I would say that, she probably did get in partly through DEI, but Harvard President Claudine Gay also got in through plagiarism, So it was a bit of plagiarism, and it was a bit of racial discrimination that got her pushed into the position at Harvard. But that's beside the point. This is Bill Ackman's post on X. This is what he's saying. Keep in mind, this guy is one of the big financiers of these universities. He's one of the big donors. He's by no means, on the other side of the aisle. He's been helping these folks, but now he's seeing what they really represent. And he said this. He said, shrinking the pool of candidates based on a required race, gender, and or sexual orientation criteria is not the right approach to identifying the best leaders of our most prestigious universities. He says, I don't think it will be long before we look back at the last few years of free speech suppression and the repeated career-ending accusations of racist for those who question the DEI movement. He said, we are all shortly going to realize that the DEI era is the McCarthy era part 2. History rhymes, but it does not repeat. And look, on the topic of woke going overboard, let me show you this. California, they're pushing for new regulations that can force private businesses to get behind the trans agenda. There's a new law that's now forcing toy retail stores to have gender-neutral toy sections. Imagine if you're like a Christian, right? Imagine you stand behind traditional values and you decide to start up a toy shop for little kids because you love kids and you love seeing them happy. Imagine there's like an old grandma, she comes back from church on Sunday and she just wants to sell toys to kids. And then California comes in and tells this Christian, tells this, grandma, tells them, you have to start offering toys for kids who are trans, and you have to put this in front of little kids who've never even heard these concepts before, or we're going to fine you. That's where California is right now. Washington Examiner says this. They say a law passed by the state legislature and signed by Governor Gavin Newsom, he signed it back in 2021, is now set to take effect in the new year, mandating gender-neutral toy sections in large toy retail stores. It says, as the Washington Examiner reported after Newsom signed the bill, quote, retail stores that fail to comply with the mandate risk being penalized with $250 fines for their initial violations and $500 fines for all subsequent violations. Wild stuff, folks. All right, let me get into some international news with y'all. Right now, of course, there's a debate going on right now on giving more money to Ukraine. Republicans, they're stonewalling it. They're saying no more money for Ukraine until we fix the border crisis. If you want money for Ukraine, well, you can give if you want another $1 billion or however much they want to give, or maybe several billion. You have to send a little bit of that money to the border and start actually enforcing our border laws. Democrats are fighting back because they don't want border laws. They're pushing back against it, making sure the borders stay open. And that's where we are right now with the budget debates. No money for Ukraine until the border gets fixed. And the budget, by the way, the federal budget is still in limbo. They're releasing spending packages to keep the government from shutting down, to make sure it doesn't happen, but they're still debating it. That being said, they are giving some money for Taiwan now, $300 million for Taiwan's tactical info system. Newsmax says this. It says the U.S. State Department has approved a $300 million sale of equipment to help maintain Taiwan's tactical information systems. That's according to the Pentagon on Friday, and it's the latest U.S. assistance for the island's defenses. It says the United States is bound by law to provide Taiwan, which China claims as its territory. I'd say the CCP claims it as territory, not China, with the means to defend itself. It says arms sales are a frequent source of tension between Washington and Beijing, and the Pentagon Defense Security Cooperation Agency said the sale was a follow-on life cycle support to maintain Taiwan's command, control, communication, and computers, or C4 capabilities. It says the support would improve Taiwan's capability to, quote, meet current and future threats by enhancing operational readiness and maintain existing C4 capabilities that provide secure flow of tactical information, it added. Now, they're saying that this basically would help maintain the effectiveness of joint combat command and control systems so it can improve, battlefield awareness. What does that actually mean? It means it would help the United States get better intel on the Chinese Communist Party and on whether the CCP is trying to actually invade. These types of command and control system gives us, essentially information on the threat landscape. The threat landscape being the Chinese Communist Party. Now, I've said many times recently, the Chinese Communist Party is really weak right now. They're politically weakened, they're having a lot of internal problems, they're economically weakened right now. It has three pillars of its economy. There's real estate, their real estate industry is falling apart. There's of course, manufacturing, which is about a third of its economy. That's falling apart because of the shipping crisis and so on, and because businesses are pulling out of China, not to mention if China locks down again for the virus, which it might do. And then the other thing is internal business, but because the banks are failing, the underground banks, they call them the black banks, those are going belly up right now, and the rest of the banking system is also having problems. There's no money flowing internally. Now, they're deeply weakened, but also that means they're more dangerous in some ways. And given that situation, there is a chance the Chinese Communist Party could try to move forward with some of its war plans. And so that's also a very real possibility. Again, even though they're weakened, they're still dangerous. And given that situation, Taiwan is on the front lines of that battle. Taiwan is the canary in the coal mine, and by giving it some extra systems to detect the CCP, that means that canary, it's going to be measuring the threat around it, is going to have a better ability to do that. That's the nature of it. All right, folks, that says jump into some questions. I'm at turning point right now, by the way. All right, let's see here. California gal, you're saying, if Democrats think President Biden won't win, what do you think their strategy will be to win? Yeah, I've been thinking that too. So this is the big narrative. Right now, the Democrats are saying that based on polling data, they don't have a shot at 2024. It's going to be a very difficult battle. President Biden is on the downfall, maybe physically and hypothetically. He's on the downfall right now. He's sunsetting, let's say, right? Biden is sunsetting. He's not doing so hot. As this happens, he's not really campaigning for 2024. He's not hitting the campaign trail. What are they doing? They're dragging out Hillary Clinton to do fundraisings for him, and they're dragging out Barack Obama to do commercials with him. They're bringing in the rest of the system to try to campaign on his behalf. Now, in addition to that, they're also, of course, legally attacking his main political enemy, Donald Trump, and that's falling apart. And they're also now facing the reality that Biden could also face criminal charges. That's also coming very quickly towards him. The things are not looking so hot for Biden. Even close to half, I think around 40% or more, based on the poll, depending on which polls you look at, about half of Democrats don't even want Biden to run for president. And they don't really have anybody else to replace him. It's a very difficult situation for him. If he falls out before the primary elections, what does that mean? It means they're going to have a normal election process for the candidate for the DNC. And then they're going to have to deal with the reality that RFK Jr. is probably going to try to run, and he might win, if it's not Biden in the pool. They don't want that. They don't want any of that. And so what are they trying to do? They're trying to make sure Biden gets past the primaries because he has incumbency. He gets past, they changed the rules, which make it so that if Biden drops out after the primaries, they can just appoint the new leader to replace him. And so instead of having the danger of RFK Jr. come in as their candidate because they had an actual vote, they can just appoint, maybe Hillary Clinton or Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama or something like that, and they can just run it like that. It doesn't look like things are looking so well for the Democrats in general right now, and that's a very real possibility. That being said, the question is, what are they going to do against, Trump? A lot of people are wondering this because they've tried just about everything. They tried accusing him of working with America's enemies. They accused him of treason. They accused him of insurrection. They accused him of rape. They accused him of financial crimes. They've gone after him for trying to rig the elections to overthrow democracy. Everything. I mean, the worst things you could possibly think of, they've accused him of. I think they've accused him of everything other than like murder at this point. They've accused him of everything other than murder. Maybe that's the next thing. I can't think of anything else. They're out of ideas. They even tried going after him with the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. The issue was though he did fly with Jeffrey Epstein from Florida to New York. He never flew on the Lita Express, and he also banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago after that whole thing. So who knows what happened? But none of that has worked out for Trump. None of the things they've thrown at him. And so a lot of people think, well, geez, what's the October surprise going to be? What's the big scandal going to be? Because they've tried everything. It's not working. People are thinking maybe Trump needs to have better security because maybe they'll make an attempt on his life at this point, because we can't think of anything else they might try to do to him because nothing is working, But really it looks like they're running out of ideas, so we'll see. James Semmer, you're saying, will President Trump plan when he wins be interpreted as being a dictator and be used as a talking point to slam him? Will he lose voters? It's not working already. They're already calling Donald Trump a dictator. They're already calling him an insurrectionist. They're already calling his supporters extremists. They called him Hitler. They called him Julius Caesar. They're out of names. And guess what? They called him every name in the book. They've accused him of everything. They've gone after him with everything. It's not working. Nothing has worked. And so name calling, racist, bigot, sexist, Hitler himself, Hitler Part 2, Orange Hitler, none of it works. Name calling at this point does nothing. It's not going to work for Trump supporters. It's not going to break them off that path. If anything, it's making people lose faith in the establishment media. None of it is working. That said, of course, after he comes into office again, if he wins, very likely they are going to be criticizing him every step of the way. But look, what's new? What's new? They did that all through his presidency last time, and they've done it ever since then as well during Biden's presidency. They're going to keep doing it, and it's going to fall on deaf ears because people are numb to it. You know what I mean? Ashley from California, you're saying, are you saying there is an actual chance of impeachment? I think there's a real possibility. So let's put it this way. Republicans in the House of Representatives will very likely vote to impeach Joe Biden. Very likely that's going to happen. Keep in mind that when Democrats controlled the House of Representatives, they voted to impeach Donald Trump twice. Now, after they vote to impeach, that has to go to the Senate. And of course, when they tried to impeach Trump at the Senate, it failed twice. And so they were not able to remove him from office. Biden, very likely the same thing. The Republicans in the House, where they have a majority, they're very likely going to vote to impeach Joe Biden. Some Democrats are probably going to go on board with that. It's going to head to the Senate, and of course, Republicans are probably going to vote to impeach Joe Biden. We'll see about the Democrats. That said, it is possible the Democrats want Joe Biden out, and actually, realistically, that might be a winning proposition for Democrats. They know that Joe Biden is, unfavorable even among Democrats right now. They know that his policies are not doing so hot. They know that Joe Biden is not doing so well. They know that if they get to the point where it's after the primaries, they can just appoint the new candidate. They can pick and choose whoever they want to replace him. If they want Gavin Newsom, it's going to be Gavin Newsom. If they want Michelle Obama, it's going to be Michelle Obama. And that brings Barack Obama back onto the scene because he'd be the first lady. I don't know. Does he play the woman? I'm not sure. It will bring Barack Obama back on the scene with that. You know what I mean? Because he could run alongside Michelle Obama. In addition to that, too, it would also mean that they could say, look, we also disagree with what Biden did. The Democrats could say that. They could wipe their hands clean and say, you know what? Biden was not acting in the way that the establishment wanted, maybe or the Democrats wanted. We're going to change things. We're going to promise change. you know, and they can run on the old Obama line, we're going to bring change, you know. They could do that, and it would probably eliminate some of the discontent. It would at least bring back a promise that things are going to be different from how it was before. And that actually might be one of their best shots. There is, in my opinion, a real possibility of that, especially as the impeachment inquiry goes forward, which is going to be, of course, Republicans mostly investigating Hunter Biden and Biden's other family members and possible crimes and tying that to Joe Biden, possibly. As that process happens, Joe Biden's credibility is going to be on the downfall, and Democrats are going to be, I think, interested in a way of washing their hands of all of that and moving forward. I do think there's a real possibility that Democrats would vote with Republicans to impeach Biden, because that actually might help them win in 2024, ironically. Free to be, you're saying, won't they just rebrand DEI again, diversity, equity, and inclusion, even though it's another form of racism? They might try to. The problem we have right now is because of the Supreme Court ruling came to, you know, affirmative action and stuff like that, is that DEI is based on racial discrimination, gender discrimination, and the whole 9 yards. And it's not just DEI that's under attack, it's that form of discrimination that DEI represents. In other words, when the Supreme Court makes a ruling, when people make legal challenges, they're not specifically talking about DEI. They're talking about the types of discrimination that DEI stands for. And so the debate we're having is not on the label, it's on the system the label represents. And because of that, even though they might try to relaunch it in other forms, which they do, you know, they might try to launch DEI Light and, you know, roll back the clock a little bit and start from, you know, a further back step and try to advance it again. But because you can sue them now, because there's legal avenues to challenge it, it's going to be difficult for that to happen. But by the way, the problem they're going to have is this also, or we're going to have, I should say. The way that socialists work is, you know, the progress of humanity, progressivism, the communist dialectic, right? Dialectical materialism. They'll push and they'll push and they'll push until you push back. As soon as you push back, and there's that, you know, that pushback, you know, they found the limit. They found where conservatives are going to say no further, not one step further. They'll scream racist, they'll scream bigot, they'll scream every name in the book. And of course, they're going to try to win the narrative. They're going to push back a little bit. Then they're going to throw their arms up and say, okay, you know what? You know, we'll make peace. We'll make peace. The conservatives drop their guard and they start pushing again. That's the way the communist dialectic works. They'll keep pushing their agenda until they meet some resistance, and then after the big debate happens, conservatives or the good people put their guard down and they keep pushing it again until it happens again, and they let their guard down, they keep pushing it again, and it happens again, and they keep doing that. That's what the progress is. That's what progressivism is. It's the advancement of the communist agenda through our lives and through our systems. Now, there hits a point, though, where it's not just pushback based on moral grounds, there's also pushback based on legal grounds. And that's when we start defeating the communists. That's when we start having to put them in prison. That's when we start having to go after them, suing them or whatever else, because they start breaking the law. And I think that's what needs to happen with this. That's what Trump's promising right now with the whole Insurrection Act and so on. So we'll see what happens with it. But without a doubt, they will keep trying to push their agenda. They're not going to throw their arms up and just give up. They are going to keep pushing their agenda. And that's also the nature of a lot of the NGOs and nonprofits and community organizers they have. Look, if you're Al Sharpton, if you're, Media Matters, if you have an agenda and you're pushing it and you run into resistance, and even if you fail, you're not going to close shop. You're not going to go find another job. Al Sharpton's not going to go work at McDonald's or something like that. He's going to keep on the racial narrative. He's going to push it because that's his job. He's not going to give up his job. He's not going to give up his donations. He's going to keep pushing that even if he has victory after victory after victory. Even if every single thing that they want, they get, they're going to find something else to make noise about because it's their job. That's how that system works. You know what I mean? When you have an institution around it, they're not going to break the institution because they get what they want in the short term. Judy Akeem, you're saying, did people really spend decades saying all toys are gender neutral just to say there needs to be a separate toy section for genderless toys? Commies need better narrative writers. I agree with you, Judith. I fully agree with you. Of course, look, you know, I don't think that the government should have any right to try to force businesses to, you know, dictate what they can or can't sell. I don't think government has any right to do that. I hope the toy sellers sue their pants off. Maybe, don't actually keep those pants on. I don't want to see what's under there these days. I don't want to see that. You know, but I think they should go after them in every single way legally, because if they're trying to, you know, put their hands into businesses and dictate business policy, which, you know, look, when they're talking about boundaries with government and boundaries in terms of being able to force businesses into, you know, socialist policies, there's a barrier there. Once that barrier gets torn down, that's when you start having socialism. As soon as the government can control the businesses, as soon as the government seizes the means of production, that's when you start having actual socialism. And so, no, I don't think they should be able to do it. And I do think there's a legal avenue to change it. Jonathan Cutting, you're saying, how would that gendered toy section law be enforced? Can't a toy store simply get rid of all sections and just sell trucks over there, Barbies and other dolls over there, etc.? Well, so currently, you know, I have a daughter, right? If you go to a toy store, you do typically have the boys section, you have the girls section, but, you know, they usually divide it where it's like, you know, action figures in this aisle, Barbies in this aisle, Legos here, and so on, right? They put them usually by brand, and that usually does end up with like gender toy sections. You could argue that who's to say a Barbie isn't for boys, or who's to say G.I. Joes aren't for girls? Maybe they'll start labeling those as gender neutral. I think what's very likely going to happen, though, is the law, this is the scary part, right? They're going to make the regulation for the toy sellers, and they're going to have designated gender-neutral toys. What does that mean? It means the toy makers are going to very likely have to have toys that are branded as gender-neutral to go in the gender-neutral section. Meaning they're going to start manufacturing very likely new toys that have that gender-neutral label on them, you know, going to be thrown in there. And so they're going to probably have a new designation which the toy sellers are going to be mandated because of that law to start buying. The other side of it is, look, it's only a $250 fine the first time or $500 after. It could be that these toy sellers might just decide to push back on that and say, you know what, $500 maybe a month or every week loss, I'll take that because I'll probably lose more money, you know, having to sell these toys no one wants to buy. And even if they get fined on that, they can technically sue the government on it, because I don't think that would hold up in the Supreme Court. I don't think in the end that it would be deemed legal. And so I think they could challenge it, but we'll see. I think a lot of the toy makers are kind of woke, and so they might do it anyways. Becca, you're saying, is the embrace of DEI ideology in the education system a false front to obtain funds for students that would not otherwise qualify for grants and government funding for education and research grants? I mean, that's the ground that they argue it on. You know, the ground for this is that, I mean, look, in my opinion, it sounds kind of racist, but they're saying that black kids and Hispanic kids and, you know, kids who are BIPOC, you know, people of color, have less access because, you know, they don't have the test scores, that they don't do as well. I think that's kind of racist to say, but that's the ground for this. And so because of that, there needs to be an external force that evens the playing field. You know, the Asian kid who gets a perfect score on the SAT should be pushed down, and the kid who, you know, the inner city kid who doesn't do so on the SAT should be pushed up. And so you have a more qualified kid who has less opportunity, right? The kid who's worked hard, who's studied hard, who put everything in to get to where he is, he's going to have less opportunity, all artificially manufactured. The kid who put in less effort, who didn't study as hard, who doesn't do as well, he's going to be raised up so that they're the same level. Or even the kid who, you know, didn't do as well gets raised above, and he gets preferential treatment. He's going to get picked regardless of anything because of the color of his skin, not because he actually performed well. What does that mean? Now, that means a couple different things. One of it is you start getting diversity hires, like the Harvard president, right? You start getting people who are not qualified for their jobs. You start getting people who don't know what they're doing, and they're going to be in charge of the research. They're going to be in charge of government agencies. They're going to be guys who, like, Lloyd Austin and so on, who, can't recruit enough troops to fill our ranks. They're going to be people, who are like the trans guy in charge of like military health or whatever like that, who are obviously not very healthy people. They're going to be people completely unqualified for what they're doing, running things that are essential for the basic functioning of our government, our businesses, our research, and everything else. And you're going to start having these institutions perform worse. You're going to start having, film studios like Disney create products that nobody wants to see. You're going to start having companies build products and announce advertising campaigns that nobody likes, like Bud Light, for example. Like Target, for example. They're going to start doing things that go against the interest of the market because they're no longer thinking like that. They're no longer thinking on basic economics. They're no longer thinking rationally. They're not the smartest of the bunch, right? They're the bottom of the pool, and the bottom of the pool has been raised to the surface, and they're the ones being selected for all these prime positions. It's not going to work. It's already not working. I think we're going to start feeling the impact of it increasingly as we have less qualified people serving in very important roles. And aside from all of that, you're going to start having the actual qualified people, the people who got kicked out, the people who got denied, the people who got rejected, becoming entrepreneurs, starting their own businesses, starting their own social movements, maybe running for office. You're going to have these qualified people looking for other things to do with their lives, and those other things are going to create grassroots movements, I think, and alternative businesses, and alternative corporations, and alternative systems that begin challenging the failing institutions. They're shooting themselves in the foot, as far as I'm concerned. Elizabeth, you're saying, also, doesn't having a gender-neutral toy section defeat their purpose? What about the toys left in the girls section? Boys can't play with them unless they identify as girls? Yeah, I know. That's what I mentioned too. It's like, I knew girls who played with like G.I. Joes. It was normal. You have tomboys. And look, I knew plenty of girls when I was a kid. I had cousins who were tomboys. They're perfectly feminine women, they're mothers and they're totally happy. It's crazy these days that if a girl likes to skateboard or play basketball, they'll try to say she's trans now. It's wild. They create entire political movements and social agendas based on that stuff. I feel so bad for little girls these days, especially. Boys, maybe they don't typically, wear the tutu and play with the Barbies, not as often. But it also doesn't mean they're going to be trans either. And so, it's really crazy that it looks like a toy section on the surface, but it actually has deeper implications on the choice the child is making, future gender, especially if the school system sees that and starts targeting them. And, the entire system of where they want to give therapy to kids if they see signs of gender neutrality or whatever, and they start targeting the kid and telling him he's trans or telling the girl she's trans. There's an entire political system tied in with that, which is really sick. Now let's see, California gal, you're saying people are becoming more aware, but what can we do about all those youth who are now propagandized? It is problematic. One of the problems you have with kids these days is they don't read the news. A lot of them don't read the news. They don't watch the news. At most, maybe they'll have a channel on TikTok or on Instagram that has some information, or maybe beyond that they'll have a YouTuber they like to watch who might get into politics. But for the most part, they're more focused on video games and entertainment and popular culture stuff. The other side you have is that as kids get more and more of their news from Twitter and from Instagram and Facebook, maybe not Facebook anymore, Instagram and I guess TikTok and maybe YouTube, all of those platforms are politically censored. None of those platforms are going to be able to show people the real stories of what's happening. There's a lot of stuff. Look, we're on YouTube right now. There's a lot of stuff I can't talk to you about on YouTube because they will censor me. And so it is a real challenge for kids because of that. By the way, I should mention, Epoch Times now is giving free subscriptions to students. And so if you're a college kid, if you're a student, you know, in like lower grades, you can get a subscription from us. We do have a program for that now. And so, you know, maybe they'll read it if it's free, you know, hopefully. I do hope so. And of course, we're going to be looking at content to reach younger audiences as well. So it's out there. The other challenge that you're going to have, well, I'd say I'd list the challenges, but you also have the other situation where, like, I know kids who are pretty young, because they're being, you know, propagandized, because the system is pushing these narratives. The system is not cool, right? The teachers, the government, all the people telling them, you know, you're gender neutral, you have to support the environmental policies. That stuff is not cool anymore. That stuff is what's being forced on them. And because of that, when the kids rebel, when they have their humor and so on, they joke about it, they make fun of it, and that ridicule, you know, that schoolyard humor is what's going to start tearing it down for them. And so, yeah, you're going to have some kids who follow along with it. Ironically, it's more like the autistic kids and kids who have, like, you know, issues. Unfortunately, they're getting preyed on by that system. A lot of the other kids are not falling for it, which is why actually the younger kids now, like Gen Z and I guess Gen Alpha, they're becoming, ironically, a bit more conservative. Or I don't know if I call them conservative. They're becoming anti-woke because of that, or much more so. Crash Bandit, you're saying, how much money is the U.S. airline company getting from the USA's government to traffic illegal immigrants around this country? I don't know, actually, but I'd assume it's a lot of money. You do have the government right now working with airlines and including using military bases to ship illegal aliens all around the United States. That should be called human trafficking, in my opinion. That they should go after them with RICO. You know, we talked about this recently. They should be going after them with RICO. You know, maybe when Trump comes into office, if he gets back in, he will do that. We'll have to see. But I do think there's a possibility for it. We don't actually know the amount of money they spend on that because they don't tell us. We have no way of knowing right now. Free to be. One sec. Free to be, you're saying, impeachment at this point seems too little too late. Is there any benefit to doing this now other than proving on principle how corrupt the Biden administration is? This is my take on it. The investigations into Hunter Biden, into Biden's family, and into Joe Biden are going to even the playing field on the narrative being used to tear down Trump. I don't think that Republican voters or conservatives are going to change at all. I don't think this is going to change the outlook for conservatives at all. But it will change the outlook for some Democrats. Because a lot of the Democrats, they hate Trump because they think he's a criminal. They hate Trump because they think he's an insurrectionist. They hate Trump because they think he's the evil billionaire. Because of all these narratives they pushed, they buy into it. And when they see that their own side of the aisle has those exact same problems, arguably maybe even worse, right? And that Biden may have actually done it, when they see they've been lied to, when they see the crimes on their side of the aisle, there's not going to be all of them, but at least some are going to say, you know what? They're doing what they said the other guy was doing, and I don't like this anymore. Maybe they're just going to put their hands up and say, I'm not going to vote. Maybe they're going to vote for Trump. You know, who knows? Keep in mind that just on the Hunter Biden laptop, based on polling data, there were voters who said that they would not have voted for Joe Biden had they known about the laptop. Enough people said they would have voted for Trump or not voted for Biden that it would have changed the outcome for the 2020 elections. And so, you know, again, maybe for us, it's not going to change anything. But for those folks, I think it will change things. But again, there's also the possibility Democrats might use that strategically and say, let's get him out of here and get a new guy in. That's going to be a difficult process for them if they have to do that as well. And they're probably going to try to accuse even Republicans of rigging the election, you know, using the legal process. You probably will see that. But it's not going to work either because they did the same thing to Trump. You know what I mean? Becca, you're saying, are they really after communist ideals? Usually there's a financial agenda involved somewhere. I would argue communism was always with a financial agenda as well. The communists, even though they say, the communists have their talking points. The talking points are lies. And then there's the actual practice of communism, which oftentimes represents the very opposite of what they claim they want to do. Communists will say that we want to create a classless society. They'll say we want to go against the wealthy elites. We want to stop the millionaires and the billionaires, you know what I mean? And as soon as they get into power, they become the millionaires and the billionaires. As soon as they get into power, they create a class system of communist leaders and everybody else. In China, if you want to be wealthy, you have to be a member of the Communist Party. You have to be part of their clique. You have to join the communist bourgeoisie. And that's the way it has worked under every single communist system. That's the way it always works. Communism is about power. Communism is about money. Communism is about control. Communism is about seizing this power structure and then using it to rob people of their wealth, taking it, seizing it, and then giving it to your cronies, and then claiming you're doing it for the people. It has happened like that under every single communist system, and they do it over and over again, and then they come to the masses and say, hey, we want to liberate all of you, and then people still agree to it. They still fall for it. Communism has never done anything other than that, other than maybe murdering people by the tens of millions as well. Every single case, it does this over and over again. Logos MO, you're saying, Josh, isn't open borders a high crime? And of course, the funding of our enemies is a high crime. I would argue it is. I would argue that the federal government working with Mexican cartels, the federal government financing the narco-terror networks, the federal government funding and working with human traffickers represents every individual working in that system committing crimes through RICO, right, racketeering, tied in with a criminal network, human trafficking, drug trafficking, and every crime those people go on to commit. Murder, drunk driving, rape, anything they do should be pinned on every single individual who is part of manufacturing that crisis. Every single one of them should be charged with high crimes, in my opinion. Every single one of them should face charges for RICO tied in with every single crime connected to the entire criminal network they're part of, and they have linked themselves with cartels, drug traffickers, terrorists, gangs, thieves, and the whole 9 yards. They should be 100% tied in with that, and every single person who has helped with it, every single person who has been involved with it should also be part of that charge. I 100% believe that that needs to happen in the future, and I think without that we're not going to have a real system of justice to make sure that never happens again, personally. Henry Fork, you're saying people in government don't want to rock the boat. They're rocking it quite a bit, but yeah, I agree. They say they just want to be silent and feather their own nest. You do have a lot of that. I'd say there's two sides of it. I'd say that the Democrats very much like to rock the boat. The Democrats will come out with the most wild thing you can imagine. Hey, parents, have you considered castrating your children? You know what I mean? They'll come out with the craziest things you can imagine. They love rocking the boat. They rock the boat all the time. If anything, the Republicans don't like rocking the boat. They're like, well, gee, we don't want to say anything too mean. Gee, we don't want to cause too much trouble. Gee, we don't want to start a conflict, and they just let the left do the craziest stuff you can imagine. The left is talking about getting rid of cows and farting cows. The left is talking about tearing down every single building and retrofitting or rebuilding every single building in America. The left is talking about banning cars. The left is talking about digital currencies that will monitor us. The left is talking about forcing us to eat bugs, about getting rid of meat. They're coming out with the craziest stuff you can imagine. And the Republicans are like, we should kind of sort of fight for our constitutional rights. It'd be great if we just have the right to own a firearm. Obviously, right? We're fighting for the rights we currently have. We're trying to defend little slivers of the rights we already have rather than pushing back against it. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, you do have the issue where people don't like rocking the boat. I would say there's been a cultural change, though. I do think with Trump taught people how to fight. I think Trump got Republicans off their butts. I think he taught them how to go out there and say, you know what, I have to fight for my future or I'm going to lose it. And I do think that even without Trump now, you do have that spirit. And it's not even Republicans anymore. I think even the classical Republicans, they get called rhinos for acting like that. They're getting pushed out. People are sick of it. People want to see people in the front lines. People want to see people being honest. They want to see people, driving for good values, and they're sick of the other side of it. They're sick of inaction. They're sick of people not doing what they say they're going to do. They're sick of people not pushing back. They're sick of it. And I think that represents the grassroots uprising we're seeing right now, where people are like, you know what? Civic engagement is the basis of the American system. This is our system. Government for the people, of the people, by the people. That is us. It is our responsibility. And if we don't get civically engaged, we're going to lose it. That's the new spirit and the cultural shift you see happening right now in the country. It's not specifically Republican and Democrat. I think it represents something entirely different. It's the establishment against the average American citizen. And interestingly, I think the average American citizen is well on his way to winning right now. Interesting times we're in, right? All right, folks, that said, thank you so much for joining us again. I'm reporting live from Turning Point, the America Fest in Phoenix, Arizona. You can see in the back here, it's kind of early here, so people aren't really pouring in yet. We're going to have exclusive interviews from Turning Point. We have like Roseanne Barr, we have Patrick Bet-Davis. All that's going to be only on Epoch TV. So come over to Epoch TV, EpochTV.com for all those exclusive interviews. Thank you so much for being here. I'll show you a quick trailer of those. And after that, of course, we'll end the episode. Let me show you this.
And the only way you know that it's real faith is that people live it out. They live out fearlessly. They say, I don't even care if you kill me, you throw me in prison, I'm going to live out my faith to do what is right. Now we're living in a time where the church in America and in much of the West, but specifically in America, has bought into this attenuated view of faith as though it doesn't matter what I do. And you think, well, okay, you're not saved by what you do, but if you aren't living out your faith, it actually proves you have no faith. I mean, it's a very dramatic message, but I believe it's come to the fore because when we see all the evils rising around us, these globalist, cultural, Marxist, atheist forces infiltrating churches in America, infiltrating America. We've seen in the last years just unprecedented evil. I mean, erasing the southern border. I mean, the kinds of things you think, what is happening? It is up to the people of God, if you claim to be a Christian, to stand against these things for the sake of everyone.
All right, folks, if you want to watch the full interview, you can find the link in the description. You can find the link in the live chat. Again, that's only on EpochTV.com, EpochTV.com. Also, Merry Christmas, almost. We're calling it Christmas. It's not Xmas. It's not Happy Holidays. It is Christmas. Merry Christmas to all of you. We have a 25-cent sale for Christmas. So again, come over, come subscribe to Epoch Times. You can have great content. And of course, watch the rest of the interviews we have over there. Merry Christmas, folks. I will talk to you again soon. And that said, as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, stay free. Thank you.